My family convinced me to buy them a house with my $60K savings, but when I found out, they gave it to my jobless sister. I let the bank foreclose it, and now they blame me for destroying the family. I'm 28 years old, work in tech, making around 85 grand a year, and what I'm about to tell you still makes my blood boil every time I think about it. Basically, I bought a house for my parents with all my life savings, and they ended up giving it to my younger sister who doesn't even have a job. I know it sounds unbelievable. Like, how can someone be that naive? But when you're in the middle of all that family stuff and the emotional manipulation, you don't see things clearly. You know? Let me start from the beginning so you understand the full context. I grew up in a lower middle class family, nothing special. My dad, Paul, always had unstable jobs, jumped from one thing to another, never lasted more than 2 or 3 years in the same place. My mom, Karen, worked part-time in an administrative office, but money was always tight. Then there's my sister Melissa, who's 3 years younger than me. And this is where it all starts. Because since we were kids, it was always obvious she was the favorite. I don't know if it was because she was the youngest, or because she was a girl, or what, but my parents spoiled her in everything. I had to get good grades, help around the house, get part-time jobs since I was 16, while Melissa basically floated through life without responsibilities. When I finished high school, I was clear that I wanted to study something related to technology, but my parents didn't have money to send me to a traditional university. So I enrolled in a tech coding school, one of those intensive ones that last like 18 months. My parents helped me pay the tuition. That's true, but I had to work full-time at a Starbucks to cover my personal expenses. It was hard, I'm not gonna lie. I slept like 4 hours a day between classes. Homework and work, but I made it. I graduated with good grades and got a decent job as a junior developer, making around $55,000 a year. It wasn't a fortune, but for me, coming from earning minimum wage serving coffees, it felt like I'd won the lottery. Melissa, on the other hand, dropped out of high school in her senior year. She simply said that school wasn't for her and my parents. Instead of making her finish or get a job, let her stay home doing nothing. When I was like 23 and had already been working in tech for 2 years, Melissa was 20 and had never had a real job. Maybe she worked a few weeks in retail here and there, but nothing serious. And the worst part is, my parents defended her, saying she was finding her path, that not everyone has to follow the traditional system, blah blah blah. Meanwhile, I was paying part of the family house bills because my parents were still struggling with money. But the thing is that during those years, I kept moving up in my career. I changed jobs a couple of times, each time for better salary, and by the time I was 26, I was making like $75,000 a year. I lived with 2 roommates in a kind of shitty but cheap apartment, saved what I could, and honestly, I was thinking about eventually buying my own place. But then the family conversations started. My parents began mentioning casually that they were getting old, that the apartment they were renting was in bad shape, that it would be nice to have their own house before retiring. And always, they ended up saying something like, "We made so many sacrifices for you, Kevin. We paid for your school when we didn't have money. We supported you when you needed it." At first, I just nodded and changed the subject, but the hints became more and more direct. My dad, Paul, started sending me links to houses for sale. Nothing fancy. 2 or 3 bedroom houses in suburban areas like 40 minutes from the city. One day, he sat me down and literally told me, "Look, Kevin, you're the only one in this family who's in a position to help. Your sister doesn't have a job and we're already old. We need you to step up for the family." And I felt like garbage, you know? Because it was true that they had paid for my tech school, which was probably like $15,000 total. And there I was making good money, while they were still renting a kind of ugly place. The pressure kept increasing for months. My mom, Karen, started with the emotional guilt trip, saying things like, "When you're a parent, you'll understand everything we sacrificed for you," or, "I thought when you were successful, you'd remember who helped you get there." Melissa didn't say anything. She was just there existing without contributing anything. But somehow I was the bad guy in the picture for not wanting to empty my savings to buy them a house. Truth is, I did feel guilty. I thought, okay, they helped me when I needed it. Maybe it's my turn to give back. Plus, in my head I rationalized that eventually the house would be for everyone, right? Like, someday, it would be my inheritance or something. So I gave in. I had like $60,000 saved, which for me was everything. Literally every cent I'd saved in 6 years of work. We found a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in a decent suburban area for $220,000. I put down the $60,000 as down payment, which was almost 30%. And my parents qualified for the mortgage because technically they both had income, even if it was unstable. The plan was that they would pay the monthly mortgage, which came out to like $1,200, and I had given that massive down payment, so the payment would be manageable for them. We moved. Well, they moved in April 2023. I was like 26 years old, just turned. The house was fine. Nothing spectacular, but decent. 3 bedrooms, one for my parents, one that supposedly would be for me when I visited, and an extra one that was going to be like an office or guest room. I stayed in my shared apartment because, obviously, it didn't make sense for me to live with my parents at 26 when I worked in the city. Plus, after giving that down payment, I was basically at zero. I didn't have money left to move to a better place even if I wanted to. The first few weeks, everything seemed fine. My parents were happy, decorating the house, buying cheap furniture, and I felt, I don't know, like I'd done something good, you know? I'd helped my family. But then Melissa started showing up at the house. At first it was like, oh, I'm gonna spend the weekend with mom and dad, but then she kept staying longer and longer. By June, she was basically living there. She had her clothes in the closet of the 2nd bedroom, her stuff in the bathroom, everything. And when I asked, what's up with Melissa? My parents said things like, oh well, she's going through a difficult time, she needs family support, let her stay for a while. A while turned into months. Melissa was still unemployed, wasn't actively looking for anything, and basically spent her time at the house watching Netflix and ordering food through DoorDash with money my parents gave her. I'd go visit them every 2 or 3 weeks, and each time it bothered me more to see Melissa there, comfortable in a house I'd paid for with my savings, contributing absolutely nothing. But every time I hinted at something, my mom jumped in with, she's your sister, Kevin, family supports each other, don't be selfish. Then, the bombshell dropped. It was like November 2023. I was 27 years old, and I arrived one Saturday to the house for a family meal. I knocked on the door, and Melissa opened. I asked her where my parents were, and she said, oh, they moved out like 2 weeks ago. I froze. What do you mean? They moved out? Melissa let me in, and the house was basically the same, but with my parents' stuff no longer there, their photos, their clothes, nothing. I immediately called my mom, and she answered super casual, like nothing. Oh yes, son. We moved to an apartment closer to your dad's work. It's more convenient. And the house? I asked, my voice already shaking with the rage I felt. Well, Melissa needs it, she answered. She can't be paying rent with how expensive everything is, and the house has space. I couldn't believe it. I simply couldn't. I had emptied my life savings, canceled my own independence plans to buy them a house, and they had given it away to my sister who does nothing. I confronted them, obviously, but my dad told me, look, Kevin, you have a good job and can rent anywhere, your sister needs stability, plus the house is the family's, not just yours. Technically, the house was in my parents' names, because they qualified for the credit, so legally I couldn't do anything. But morally, ethically, it was an absolute betrayal. Things got worse. Turns out I, like the idiot I was, had kept giving extra money to my parents, like $300 or $400 a month, thinking they were helping to pay down the mortgage faster. So in December, I started investigating and discovered that extra money hadn't gone to the mortgage at all. My parents had used it to pay rent for their new apartment, which, surprise, was more expensive than what they were paying before. So, literally, I was subsidizing their upgrade while my sister lived for free in the house I bought. I confronted them at a Christmas dinner that was an absolute disaster. I told them that Melissa had to start paying something or get a real job, that I wasn't going to keep sustaining this. My mom cried. My dad yelled at me that I was ungrateful, that after everything they'd done for me, this is how I repaid them. Melissa just stayed quiet, looking like a victim. I gave them an ultimatum. Either Melissa starts contributing with at least $500 monthly for the mortgage, or I wash my hands of all this. Melissa supposedly got a part-time job in January 2024. At a coffee shop, she paid like 2 months of $500, but then started with excuses. That she didn't have enough, that she had expenses, that she needed to fix her car. By March, she wasn't paying anything again, and my parents defended her, saying she was doing her best. I was fed up, completely emotionally broken. I had sacrificed everything for this family, and they had used me, plain and simple. So I made the hardest decision of my life. In April 2024, exactly 1 year after they moved, I stopped paying anything related to that house. I no longer gave extra money. Nothing. I told my parents it was their responsibility, because the house was in their name, that I had already fulfilled more than enough with the down payment. They got angry. Obviously. My dad told me I was destroying the family. How could I be so cruel with my own sister? But I didn't feel anything anymore, except resentment. The following months were horrible. My parents tried to make the payments alone, but they couldn't afford it. They started falling behind on the mortgage. The bank sent them notices, then more notices, then foreclosure warnings. Melissa stayed in the house like nothing, refusing to leave or look for another place. By July, they were 3 months behind, and the bank officially started the foreclosure process. My parents begged me to intervene, to help them one more time. My mom sent me text messages every day saying she was going to lose her house because of me. How could I do this to them? But I had already made my decision. I wasn't going to rescue them again. I had already lost $60,000 and years of my life worrying about a family that didn't value me. In September 2024, the bank sold the house at auction. It sold for less than what they owed on the mortgage, so technically my parents came out with debt, although I think they found some way to negotiate it or file for bankruptcy. I don't know the details well because I wasn't talking much with them anymore. Melissa finally had to move out. I think she went to live with a friend or something. I'm not really sure. My parents had to move to an even cheaper apartment, smaller, in a not very good area, and me, well, I finally rented my own 1-bedroom apartment in October. It's not luxurious, but it's mine. I pay $1,400 a month, which is manageable with my current salary. That's already up to $85,000. I don't have roommates. I don't have anyone asking me for money. I don't have the emotional burden of a toxic family constantly blaming me for their problems. Since then, the relationship is basically broken. We send messages on birthdays and holidays, but it's superficial, cold. My dad still throws in my face that I let them lose the house, as if I had been responsible for their terrible decisions. Melissa has never apologized to me or acknowledged her role in all this. My mom sometimes tries to build bridges, but then ends up defending Melissa and saying I should be more understanding because I'm the older brother and have more resources. Truth is, I don't feel guilt, and that's the most liberating part of it all. At first, I did feel bad. I wondered if I'd been too harsh, if I should have done more. But with therapy? Because yes, I started therapy last year. I realized I was a victim of financial abuse and emotional manipulation for years. My parents used me as an ATM, and when I no longer served their purposes, they turned me into the villain. Melissa never had to grow up or become responsible for anything because there was always someone else, me, bearing the consequences of her decisions. Now I'm 28, living alone, rebuilding my savings little by little. It's not the $60,000 I lost, obviously, but I have like $8,000 saved and I'm going up. I'm dating someone, a girl I met at work, and when I told her this whole story, she couldn't believe it. She tells me I did the right thing by setting boundaries, that my family exploited me, and hearing it from someone outside the situation helps me validate that I'm not crazy. Sometimes I think about what the relationship with my parents would be like if things had been different, if they had valued me the same as Melissa, if they hadn't used me. But they're thoughts that come and go. They don't keep me up at night like before. What I do know is that I'm never again going to sacrifice my financial and emotional stability for people who don't appreciate it, not even if it's family. Family is supposed to support you, not drain you until you're empty, and then blame you when you can't take it anymore. And if that makes me selfish or cruel in my parents' eyes, well, So be it. I'd rather live peacefully in my one-bedroom apartment being the bad son than live with roommates at 30 while my sister lives for free in a house I paid for. It sounds harsh, I know, but it's the truth.